Good to see everybody. Thanks all for coming. My name's Scott Mesa. I'm the corporate partner here that kind of runs our corporate and securities group. You guys may know GT. It's a gruesome thought, but we're 2,000 lawyers around the world. Big firm, but really our focus has always been on entrepreneurial companies. We do a lot in the software space, doing a lot with AI, a lot of M&A. I'm delighted to have Hector and Lori here. We've got a great panel. So thanks very much for coming. The only thing I really ask is please eat as much food as you can and at least have one cocktail, because otherwise my staff will start eating and drinking, and we can't have that. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much, Scott. Greenberg, Traurig, and Scott have been such wonderful hosts to us through time, and tonight is no exception. I'm Lori Wiggins. I'm the CEO of Byond, and I want to welcome everybody here tonight. So glad that you're here. We're going to have a great AI panel discussion. And Byond, we serve as business advisors to those that are in the SaaS and hardware communities. And we welcome you again. And I'm going to introduce Hector Del Castillo, who's going to be tonight's moderator. He is my business partner, and he is the Chief Product Officer of Byond.
Well, thanks, everyone. And I just wanted to welcome all of you and reiterate the welcome for our gracious hosts, GT Law and Scott Mesa, who's been very helpful, but also wanted to let you know, before we get started, before we call the panelists, this entire presentation is being recorded, and we're going to be sharing it with all of you and everybody else who signed up and did not make it for tonight. And also, for that reason, I'm going to be asking that if you have any questions, because we are going to have, this is going to be quite an interactive program. When you have any questions, please raise your hand, and we will bring the mic over to you, because we want to make sure that for the recording, that before you ask your question, that we can actually capture that via the audio. And that's what we're going to be asking our panelists to use the microphones, not because they're not loud enough, but because we want to make sure that we have a clean audio for tonight's recording so that you can view it, and it will be high quality audio. So with that, I'd like to welcome and actually introduce today's panelist. And I'd like to call up to the table our panelists, Brenda Fan, as well as Brian Gallagher, if you guys can come up, Ajay Gupta, and Al Naqvi. And what we'll do is we will, first of all, do brief introductions. I'm going to be asking each of the panelists to take their seats, do brief introductions. We have some questions that I'll be asking as well. And then if you have a question in the middle of discussion, let us know, because we will be calling at towards before we wrap up for audience Q&A. So let's go ahead. Panelists, please take your seats and let's get started. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand, and then we'll let you know. So let's go ahead and do introductions. So welcome, everybody. And why don't we start from the far end and work this way? So Al, go ahead and briefly introduce yourself, please.
Scott, Lori, and Hector, thank you for organizing this great job and very, very professional setting. I think this is the right time to do this. My name is Al Naqvi. I am a CEO of American Institute of Artificial Intelligence, 8 years in business now, and I focus on building Gen AI careers for people and successful businesses in Gen AI. And author 12 books in AI. I teach at National Defense University seminars and several other engagements at various universities. But at heart, just a pure AI researcher.
Hello, everybody. My name is Brian Gallagher. I am the CEO of a company called CodeLock. I'm also the co-founder of a company called Protected by AI, which we spun CodeLock out of. CodeLock's focused in on software supply chain security specifically. We'll talk a little bit tonight about how we're using AI related to that. However, within the Protected by AI realm, we kind of have a unique twist where we're looking at the intersections of human behavior and mathematics from a data science perspective, and how we can use that to influence human behavior or predict human behavior for use in different ways. So look forward to being here and on the panel and talking with everybody.
Thanks, Hector. Thank you, Lori, also for organizing, and Scott for hosting. Scott, I promise I'll do what I can about the cocktails afterwards. No promises. But I run a company called HSR.Health. We are a geospatial health risk data and insights company. We build models to predict the spread and severity of disease and then work to productize those and market those to organizations that are potentially impacted by health emergencies. Everyone from supply chain to manufacturing to emergency response and healthcare, obviously. I also serve as the chairman of the board for Holy Cross Health, which is a multi-hospital social safety net system and a flagship system for a $22 billion health organization around the country with 101 hospitals in 27 states. So we have the opportunity to see how AI might be implemented within healthcare. And I serve on a number of global health organizations to see what's changing around the world in health, and have an opportunity to be a lecturer at IIT Bombay to see really what's changing in terms of the new research coming down the pike. Happy to be here with all of you today.
Brenda?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy and excited to be here and meet all the new friends. And thank you, Laurie and Hector, inviting us here. So my name is Brenda Fan, and I am the co-founder and CEO of a travel tech named Naui. So we are trying to use AI to transform travel experiences, like putting your travel instinct into AI so that anyone can discover the new travel experiences just like a local expert. So a little bit background about myself is I spent years in data engineering, data science, as well as product development in governments agencies such as SEC, GSA, and Postal Service and banking system. So I'm really excited to share what we have done using AI, lesson learned, mistakes, and a lot of fun facts. So honored and happy to be here.
Great. And I would just want to welcome everyone. And I want to get started with this particular question. It's if you mentioned how you're actually applying AI, but I want to start by asking Brian to chime in on this question is, how did you get the idea of implementing AI within your company? And what does that mean to your company? What does it mean to your customers?
Sure. So whenever I think of this question, I kind of think about it in two parts. I think about how are we using AI internally in our company for business processes and to assist us and reaching out to market. Then there's a flip side of the question on, how are we using it in the product that we deploy with customers and clients. So starting on the internal piece with AI, I was talking to a gentleman while we were having some food prior, and he was asking questions about Chat GPT and how does that fit into business and so on. And obviously, generative AI is one of the big topics right now that people are hearing about because it's so accessible and it's so easy to use. Our team has, from a marketing perspective, been able to use generative AI to do things that we wouldn't have been able to afford to do in the past. We create all kinds of imagery, anywhere from newsletters to presentations to customer slicks to just on and on, that would have cost us tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. And we've been able to train different models to do that in a matter of seconds. We're using AI to write content for marketing outreach campaigns. We're using it primarily in anything that's customer focused and client focused right now. And it's letting me compete with people that have a much larger marketing budget than I have. Do you want me to touch on the product side? Or?
I want Ajay to actually talk a little bit more about how you came up with the idea of putting together your solution. What problem are you solving and for whom?
Thanks. Yeah, and I was actually interested in hearing more about AI for marketing. That's really important. But I suppose we'd almost have to say we're kind of an AI native company, or really we were using predictive analytic mechanisms from the beginning to try to predict the spread and severity of disease. Back then, you might have just called it machine learning or data science, and the AI term has sort of taken off with ChatGPT and OpenAI. But we've always known that in order to be able to predict future health emergencies, you want to know the data and analyze it as fast as possible. The genesis really came from a board member who is one you might consider one of wrote one of the sentinel papers in predictive analytics in healthcare. He worked in an ICU where he was tracking 1,000 details about any patient, every single patient. And then as soon as a trigger went, an alarm went, a very expensive, very skilled team would descend on the patient to save their life, right? And he was saying, if we're tracking everything we can think of, why can't we predict even seconds in advance that a trigger is going to happen and we can respond then? And in healthcare, seconds make a difference, right? And so he worked on a paper, and you can look up the paper, as it said, Sentinel paper on predicting future health outcomes based on current statistics. And so we wanted to extend that to the population, right? If you can take it out of one patient in an ICU to the entire community, well, you will really change the cost structure of healthcare. So we started doing that, and it really just grew from there organically, but building on modeling at a time, data set at a time, just leveraging how we can make a prediction on a particular health outcome. That's sort of where we got our start, and we're still here.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, Brenda, you also, I wanted to kind of ask you, how did you get the idea for your company, and what problem are you solving for the people that you're servicing?
Yeah, sure. So I believe like different vertical or industry, they will have different use case and use scenario. So I'm not sure whether I can cover all of them, but for our example, for example, we trying to figure out like what's the real problem in the real world that we're trying to solve. That's first thing first, we take into consideration before we thinking about AI technique. So for our example, we trying to save whole lot of time for traveler who planning their, no matter like a family vacation or anniversary, they always need to go through a lot of, repeated, tedious, boring, time-consuming process. And we understand that a lot of this process can be done by AI and accurately. So talking about AI, we using like AI chatbot, AI agent, combined with data processing, analytical process to solve this problem in a really efficient way. And then I think that's how we start the idea and figure out the right technique we want to use to solve the problem for our, target customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. I do have a question for Al. And Al, can you tell us a little more about the focus of your institute? Who are your beneficiaries or constituents?
Sure.
Are you a trade association of organizations, or is it
No,
something
just
different?
an institute. So go back 20 years when internet was coming in. And when you met with executives, I don't know, young people, forgive me for that, but I was there. So I was talking to executives trying to sell certain internet things. My company was internet at that point, a company that I built and sold. And you would go and meet with these executives, and they will say, and you ask them, what do you use internet for? And they'll say, well, my salespeople now don't need a brochure or a business card because we have a website. So that was the limitation at that point that people imposed on themselves, not understanding the power of internet. Same thing happened 8 years ago when AI revolution came, and you ask people, executives from different companies, what is AI? Well, AI is RPA, robotic process automation. Well, AI is expert system. Well, we're doing AI in our Excel spreadsheet. Okay. So, and then few people understood the power of machine learning, but then resources were not there. So we formed this institute. I envisioned this, which will enable transition people from pre-AI economy to what I call AI economy. That was the focus. 5,000 people trained, 500 companies served, more than that, 35 governments. And now we focus on from AI economy to what we call Gen AI economy, the second transition that's happening. That's what we're focused on now. Does that help?
Yes, that
Good.
helps.
Thank you.
And actually, I wanted to ask, I'm seeing that right now, the acceleration and commercialization of all sorts of different AI technologies. Talk about a little about that rate of change compared to the internet. I mean, you talk about the internet, that was in the 90s, right? now we're seeing all this emergence, and it seems like we're going from AI 1.0 to 2.0, 3.0 very quickly. So can you talk about the rate of change and acceleration of that rate of change?
Sure. Unfortunately, rate of change in America was less than it was in China with AI. But with internet, obviously, we were leaders and we created so many powerful companies that came out. So, and people were quitting their jobs at that point, starting these new startups. You didn't see that kind of that acceleration primarily because AI was very hard. Very few people understood that. And there was this elite club of AI, mathematics, PhD types. And, and one of the things that I specialized on in taking complex things and translating it so everyone can understand. That's why most of my clients were key C-level executives. But then you talk to other professors and they sit down and they talk about logistical regression, this, that, they lose you within 5 minutes. So no one was ready to quit their jobs. Now that we have Gen AI, now everyone can go in and see, wow, I can solve this problem with Gen AI. I can write this essay with Gen AI. I can do this marketing with Gen AI. And all of a sudden, ideas will start flourishing and new businesses will be born. I think we're at that point when this revolution of Gen AI is about to start. It's right very, very early at this point, and you will see the same exact spark that we saw with internet. Now, I think people will be quitting their jobs to launch their companies. I think I met someone already in this, people here who already quit his job probably to start a company. So this is the revolution we're starting now.
Yep. And Brian, a question for you, and that is, you mentioned about how you're using it internally. Talk a little more about what you're able to do with your customers when you're building AI enablement empowered into the solutions that you're delivering to your customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to comment on something that was just said as I parallel into that, because one of the things that we fundamentally believe when we're thinking about artificial intelligence is we kind of like to just flip it backwards. So rather than saying AI, we like to say IA. And what is IA? So rather than artificial intelligence, we think about it as intelligence augmentation. And so the best supercomputer in the world is between your ears, and it's still going to be for a while. So how do we use AI to augment what we're doing so we can go and do other things? So your point on people creating new jobs and looking at sort of that next step. Nobody's going to come in my belief, take your jobs and they're all going to go away tomorrow. It's going to create new opportunity and new ideas for us to grow on. With that being said, kind of correlating into what we're doing from a product perspective, we're focused in on software developers and understanding malicious code that gets put in software specifically. And so historically, software development has been very sparse. You have open source software, people pulling it from different places, different locations, and it's not interconnected very well. So finding bad stuff can be difficult, and knowing who originally had fingers to keyboard can be very hard by the time you have a finished product that's actually delivered. So one of the things that we did is said, well, can we start looking at the different data points around the developer itself and model specific behavior that can give us either predictive outcomes, help us to alert on anomalies or trends, or something that could even work in a way to help better employees' productivity, not just the threat and the harm part. So with any type of AI and data, you need data and you need lots of it. You need it from different sources and spots. And so that's something that we're working on as we're creating that and looking towards the sort of the next step of what we can do to help make the software development process safer for everybody.
Great. Thank you so much. Brenda, question for you, and that is kind of along those lines. What are you doing as far as enabling your target customers to do more of, and how quickly are they able to quickly utilize what you have for them?
Yeah, sure. So I think this is a great question for our scenario because we are a little bit different is we are a consumer-faced platform. So when we're talking about our product and with AI, I think people are really confused thinking that like you got to have certain like AI technique, you need to how to write coding. But to us, what we learn is like 80% of our focus is still product engineering. We want to figure out like whether we can like tackle the problem for our user they are facing right now. So for example, some part of our intrinsic value we're providing for our user is like efficiency and like emotional value when they're using AI, and then they're trying to like get cost reduction when they're planning their itinerary. But first thing first, we realize and learn from our hard way is like people don't trust AI. When AI generating an itinerary with you, they rises the crisis of trust. Like, and then we realize that the key essence of travel is like getting out there, right? Either like get away or visiting a park. Think about in a different way. AI is a virtual tool. Everything generated is virtual, no matter it's an image, text, or even video. Like I'm sure you guys know the Sora recently, but there's no way like AI can replace how people think, how people feel for those authentic emotion. So that's why we learning the product with the user feedback and switching one of our strategy, changing from generative AI into AI agent. We understand and analyze all the little tasks that can be done, and then we delegate to different AI agent. You can understand it as a virtual employee. Okay, you are a boss, you have 10 employees, you're asking different people to different small little tasks. And then you use your algorithm to, come up with a summary to present to our user and solutions. So this is how we learn differently, like from the AI technique process. But the main goal is still like to solve the real problem from the use scenario. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. Ajay, for you and your solution, what I've seen often is AI is for organizations is real about making better decisions faster. What are you seeing in the adoption of your solutions that you've created and the way that you're allowing organizations to make those decisions, better decisions faster?
That's a great question. One of the communities we serve is the emergency response community, right? Where it is really life or death and they have to respond to a fire or a hurricane or a flood immediately. And when we first started working with them several years ago, before the pandemic, what they'd tell us is that they want the right information at the right time so they can make a decision, right? For instance, things like they don't know what kind of pharmaceuticals are needed in a response area. So they have to just bring the entire US pharmacopoeia into the site, which of course is a lot and it's expensive and a lot of those drugs are harmful. So we don't necessarily want them in the communities if they're not needed, right? And so we told them that we can predict that, we can give you insights on what that is. But then as time passed, they have more and more data about every aspect of a disaster. And every day there's a new satellite constellation coming online with new and better data available. So now they not only have to make the right decision, but they cannot even look at all of the data that is available to them. So they do need an AI engine that can tell them what decisions they need to make. Because that's sort of the evolution of their needs, right? They need an engine that tells them what decisions they need to make and then categorizes and classifies the data underlying it to guide them into which decision might be better than others. So that's been an evolution that we've seen. Emergency responses led that, and healthcare and others like supply chain and manufacturing are sort of following with being inundated with far too much data that they just simply need agents to help make decisions from.
Yes. I want to kind of find out, does anybody in the audience have a question? If you can raise your hand, I want to make sure that we can bring the microphone over to you if you have a question. Akash, if you can go to George, please.
Hi, Lori and Hector. Thank you so much for setting this up. Scott Meza, too. This is really, really helpful. So my question, I don't know how to address this, so very transparent. It might be a naive question, it might be a silly question, but I'm going for it anyhow. So my company is GS consulting and trading. So I help trading partners, I help software companies, and I'm helping a media company. And Brian, what you're doing, creating outreach programs, content marketing. So my question is around video. So would AI help create a video program where we could replicate the story so that we could get it out faster, quicker to a number of folks?
So the answer is soon. OpenAI, that's behind ChatGPT right now, actually just put out a model, I think in the last month, and it's still in a testing phase right now, but it's able to do up to 2 minutes of video, similar to other content. It's not openly available, and I think it still needs some more training and work, but that's where it's going to. So you're continuing to see things. My understanding is it's limited to actually 2 minutes of video, but again, from a marketing perspective, we just outsourced a bunch of mini videos that we wanted to put on YouTube, and it cost a fortune. So being able to do that in-house in a matter of minutes is just another massive savings.
Yeah, thank you. And just a quick follow-up here. Apologize. I don't want
Yes.
to bogart the
No
mic here,
problem.
but for Al, would your institute help someone like me where I have multiple businesses where I could come to you and say, hey, look, these are the things I'm trying to solve. Can you help me?
Yes, and we also have a platform, educational platform, training platform, which is job specific. So you can get trained on Gen AI for, let's say, if you're diplomat, Gen AI for diplomacy, if you can Gen AI for planning, Gen AI for media. So you can get trained on that. It's online also, as well as direct helping. You're welcome.
And Brenda, I wanted to ask because I think when you mentioned one of the applications that is already able to create videos from just texting, right?
Yeah, that's
basically
Sora.
chatting.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little more about Sora?
Yeah, I think it's a recently launched feature. And by the way, it's only allowed for a few internal testing. So it's not fully public. But from what we learned, it's just like turning your typing text into up to 1 minute video production. So people already feel the threats. And then especially there are already existing competitors like Runway, some provider like Midjourney, they can also like produce several seconds of video, but the quality and then the length and then pixel, all the detail is so much more powerful like than what we can see in Sora. Although they also admitted that there may be some glitches, like some image not flowing, the logic not correct, but you can imagine that it definitely is the trend. So I definitely want to add to that is like from our earlier question is people always compare like the AI right now, the generative AI is like the launch of iPhone. But remember like 10 years ago when I had my first iPhone, I only used for, alarm. Text not until the ecosystem was built up entirely with all the apps, and then you're using all the application, using all the product that makes up the whole ecosystem like more sophisticated. So same for our AI. ChatGPT was like boom, like since like 2022, I remember. So that was just a construction model. It was like a construction. So right now it's a totally new era that even solo founder is possible to generate like an MVP or really a small product and then using all the like Sora, like video writing content. So it's a lot of potential for us like entrepreneur or startup founders to utilize this technique.
Yes, thank you so much. And I wanted to point out, yes, so let me just, and we'll go to the next question. Wanted to point out, we have been curating a list of new AI tools strictly for business productivity. If you're interested in that, you can connect with us afterwards and we can share this information because it is publicly available. And it's amazing how quickly these tools are being produced because they're being done by AI assisted applications that are just doing these things that you never thought could be done without a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of heavy coding. And all of these tools are being enabled very quickly by these AI tools that are now springing up. And we already have about 120, more than 120 productivity tools that are AI powered, and we can share that list. These are publicly available applications that you can try before you buy. and it's incredible what they are able to do.
Can I issue a caveat?
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, this is absolutely accurate, right? And tonight, you're 120. By midnight, it'll be out of date because there's
Yes.
new applications.
Yes.
But depending on what exactly you're doing, you might want to be careful before we just use the latest and greatest AI app out there. So internally, we do not use any model from anybody else, even our partners, until we build the model ourselves so that we know how it's supposed to work, right? Now, obviously, we're not just talking about videos or something like that, marketing content, right? But we're talking about life and death scenarios in health, right? Making a decision on which patient may be high risk. So there's a little bit more at stake, maybe, but for your businesses, things are at stake for you. And certainly what we put out in the community about our business is important. To make sure you know how it's doing it, what it's saying, what the connotation of a letter might be, right? Which word is better than what other words. Make sure you know and you are 100% comfortable with what it is before you put it out. And only way that I think of that I can do that is by making sure I built it myself first. And once I know what it's supposed to do and how it's supposed to do it, then I'll use something from OpenAI, or I'll use LangChain, or I'll use Bedrock, and I'll use a number of other tools to do the work faster and better, maybe. But I have to be able to know what's going on first.
Let me add on to that just for a second. So obviously talked about AI from a marketing perspective, which is vastly different from, say, a defense perspective, where the other half of my life is. And if you think about a drone, can you use AI and believe what it says to drop a missile on that building over there? There's this whole thing called XAI, explainable AI. We're in a legal office right now. So you can think about it from a defense perspective, but even from the court of law. So if you're from an investigative perspective using AI to connect the dots for different things, and you're going to go to court, you need to be able to understand the bits and pieces of how you got to that answer in that conclusion. And so being able to just trust what ChatGPT is putting out, even on the marketing side, I tell my team, it's going to get you 90%. You sure as heck better proofread it and make sure that what it's telling you is right.
Yes, definitely. So there's a question back there. Is that right?
Hi. I take different levels of AI, some smarter than other AI, some just maybe they build it to be stupid. But the question is, how much time does a programmer or programming take to get one thought in AI?
Go ahead.
Okay, so first thing, it's not rules that we're talking about. So it's not that your programmers are writing line by line code. The difference that happened from expert systems or rules-based to machine learning was that you take data and you allow machine to develop an intuition. Think of that as intuition from that data, almost like a mathematical equation, and then predict the next answer because you haven't told it, you have only given it data. So if you give data on what oranges are and what apples are and tons of examples, it eventually develops a mathematical model that says, okay, if this is an orange, then it should be like this. It has these things, and it develops that intuition. So machine learning projects where, that's what machine learning was designed as. Now that Gen AI is out, which moved from normal machine learning to something known as transformer architecture, now it's even more efficient. So many projects that were now taking 10 months to a year, they have been thrown out because you can do that in 5 minutes. In fact, you can right now, before this session ends, can probably develop about 10 applications in this time on OpenAI if you really want to.
Mhm.
So it's that smart now.
Yes, and because of that, I'm with Ajay, what he mentioned earlier. It's like you've got to be careful before you deploy it. You've got to do lots of testing in different ways, and you can even create useful test scenarios using the same capabilities to come up with test scenarios that you can quickly build as well. And you should be doing that as well, right? Especially if you're looking at anything that is life-threatening or that is where there's physical security involved. you've got to do that initial testing as well, not just blindly put it out there. And so I think that the explainable AI, there's a purpose for it. And often right now, we're able to do things much quicker than we ever imagined because of these evolution of these technologies. It's not a single technology, it's multiple technologies that have been evolving all together for decades now. And now there's been a convergence of all these technologies. That's what we're seeing right now, right? And so I think with much of this, it's all about being an early adopter, because I think that you're not necessarily going to be replaced by an AI at this point, but I would say you probably will be replaced by a much younger person that is using AI as a virtual assistant and to get them up to speed very quickly, because that's what you can do. But there's nothing preventing you from being an early adopter, at least testing it out, checking it out, and then figuring out how is it that I'm able to use it, and how can I build my business around this as an entrepreneur founder, and how are you able to, who are you going to be your customers that you're going to be solving a specific problem that they have in mind.
Can I
Yes,
quickly
Alan.
add one thing? Yeah, just to add to that, just 2 years ago, if you would have gone out and said, okay, I want to build my company around AI, as he said, it would have taken you not only, millions of dollars of investment, a lot of time, a lot of planning, a lot of strategy, and just to hire those PhDs in AI at that point was virtually impossible. They were, being pulled by Facebook and Google and all that. Today, that's what I'm saying with Gen AI. Wow, you can just go ahead and start building your entire company around AI in no time. That's where we are today. That's the innovation that happened and changed the course of, I think, AI adoption in America.
So there was a Super Bowl ad on that too.
Yes,
Yeah.
Microsoft one.
Yes. Microsoft Copilot,
Microsoft.
right? So there's essentially two separate people, right? Young people. I'm sure everybody saw the Super Bowl. It was a Super Bowl, but they all have business ideas, and just every time they have an issue they have to solve, they go to Copilot AI, and it gives them the solution to the issue that they solve. Right. So I think, though, when we talk about job loss, you're right. I don't think the economy will lose jobs. I think individuals might, right? I remember 2 years ago, I hired IIT Bombay PhD, right? In AI. I was so excited, right? I bragged about it, press releases all over the world. We got one of the best. 5 weeks later, she left to do another job. I'm not even sure the press release got out of the media before Today, you find data scientists who are unemployed sometimes, right? So I think there is a risk of an individual losing the job, as you said.
Yes, economy will not. Just as Brenda said, that when you go back to when iPhone came out. Now go back even before that, when we transitioned from horse buggies to cars, right? So it was not just cars that we were selling. We started making roads, retail sector developed, offices developed, commuting developed, mechanics developed, batteries developed, all that innovation that goes in a car developed, and unfortunately DMV developed, so all of those things happen because of one transformation. That's where we are now at that point. We're at that stage when the first car just came out and someone said, it's possible, and now imagine where this is going.
Yeah. Do we have a question back there? I wasn't really sure.
Yeah, I had one.
Yes, go
You
ahead.
guys may have talked about it already. I think,
Can you
can you hear me okay?
No, yeah, I think it's muted. Make sure.
Usually hearing me is never.
There we go. That's it.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So the question I had is ethical, transparent, responsible use of AI. It's one thing if you're using AI to write a term paper. If you're using AI for, let's say, you guys mentioned building drones or repairing aircraft, there's a much higher risk. You talked about, well, in our own companies, we need to verify what we're doing, make sure. But what's the bigger solution? Do we need rules, guidelines? Do we need the government involved? What's the way to police these extremely important applications that, if used wrongly or inaccurately, could have devastating consequences? Any high-level thoughts around that?
In 2016, I developed the first model for AI ethics and governance. and then it was adopted by different, including Harvard and few others. This is the biggest question of our time. So many jobs will be created just focused on this one thing. When you look at state level actors, they will have different types of ethics. Within that, police departments will have different ethics versus CIA versus NSA versus because of the nature of their job. And then you come down to businesses. Yes, we will need entire, just like I said, DMV, yes, regulation, lights, traffic lights, so traffic rules, all of those things. So we will need, and not much work is being done on that. Unfortunately, we're approaching it in a, it's still, I think there's, we're lagging that about 10 years. And then what he mentioned about, explainable AI, XAI, the part is that it's still in research phase. It cannot be explained. So just as if I ask you that, hey, can you open my brain, take it out, put it on a table, and then figure out why I thought about something? You won't be able to do that. You could be the best brain surgeon. You said, I can't look at this brain and figure that out. Same thing with AI. You can't just operate it and say that, tell me why you thought something. So explainable AI, we're looking at it. And now with transformer architecture is even harder because models are so big, huge now.
Right.
So that's something. Go ahead.
And the implication of that is that in addition to everything you just said, which is 100% accurate, we may not even know if the AI is violating a regulation, right? I think that's the bigger issue.
Yes.
Right.
Adding on, there was a question earlier about, prior to the talk here, when I was speaking to somebody, is the U.S. Ahead of AI? Are we on the top of the world? And the answer to that is no. China is right now. And going back to the statement of ethics, that can be an interesting topic. You think about it from a nation state perspective and protecting national defense. Well, why has China been able to get ahead of us? They have a different set of rules and rule book that they're playing by on how they access data, what they have access to, what they do with it, the negative outcomes that happen with it. And so I know I'm a former intelligence guy on the government side. That's a big topic in the intelligence community right now. How do we handle that issue? How do we find that balance between keeping Americans safe and winning that war, but also the ethical side? And there isn't a right answer yet.
Yes. I think we have time for one more question. So go ahead, Will.
Yeah, so we've adopted AI from the standpoint of developing our SIMs, our marketing materials, and it saved us about 50%. But I'm very concerned about how do you make that, since we're brokering businesses, how do you make that AI intellectual property? What's the break-even point to making it yours? I love what you said, check it out first. But what we're doing is we're reverse engineering. We're using it and then we're checking it out before we finalize the product. So we don't have any internal AI systems that we're using. So what's the break-even point for making it intellectual property? And then the second question is directed to Al. Tell me about your forecast for those businesses that are going to be generated. I want to buy something.
So yeah, the first question I'll just quickly answer. Obviously, this is a law firm, so they'll be able to do a much better job in answering that. But if you look at what OpenAI's policy is, and you read that, they do expect you to mention that a reasonable person should be able to look at your work and if you're using our generated data, should be able to say that, oh, okay, this was generated by Gen AI. So they do have that in their policy. It's deeply, embedded in that. Then they're facing a lawsuit now by New York Times, which is claiming that these guys have, taken our data to train that, how that will filter through and affect, consumers of that, another issue. and that's and I think people who don't embrace, they will be, just like the example I gave you with buggies. That's what would happen, and this is something that we all have to go with this revolution. It's no choice. I do want to say that I agree with Brian that yes, China does have that thing, their issues with but they also did, they played the game right, and we sort of dropped the ball on that. I have a book on that. Its name is At the Speed of Irrelevance, which I authored just on this issue to explain why we needed to turn back. And then Senate responded to my book. White House responded to, thank God. So things are being done differently. But I think that they had a lot of guidance from their government. We probably didn't have as much guidance in America that we needed last 6 years.
To your first question, you're right, Al, that we defer to lawyers and our legal counsel on what's IP. But I think what's going to happen, especially with regards to the open AI clauses, which I'm sure everybody has, all of the generative AI tools have, is that we're all going to have our own AI. Now, whether the source of that model is ChatGPT's public versions or something else, if it's our own AI trained to sound and look and feel and act like us, then we may get back to having intellectual property capacity. And it's doable, right? So I know I have kids in college. They're not writing papers anymore. They have trained their ChatGPT, and I guess it's version 3.5 or 4 or something, to make papers that sound like them. So in the iterative chat process, they can produce a paper that sounds like them. Now, either their faculty are accepting it and tolerant, or it works and it sounds like their voice, which is how it works. It surprises, but that's the case.
Yes.
So this question is for Al. I've read that quantum computing could take the place of AI in the future. What is your thoughts about that?
It's not that it will take the place of AI. Now, AI that's being done on traditional machines that we have now, it will transition into quantum. And that means quantum algorithms. So much smarter, much better, much faster. And God forbid, if we get there, it will be a totally different world with all the encryption that we have today gone. So that's, some of the things we're working on. I mean, our institutes are working on that in America, also in China, but the race has begun. I just hope that we're ready for that. So it will be intelligence now supercharged on quantum computer. So think of
What's
that
the
way.
timeline on that?
Sure, go ahead. Timeline, I mean, some of those quantum algorithms exist today, but they can do, the best they can do is multiply 7 by 3 and reach the conclusion that it is 21. That's the maximum that they can do. But imagine all the research that's going on. It's only a matter of time. But I would say 5 to 7 years, we will see some major breakthroughs. That's what I know. But there could be, some research project going on that they haven't talked about in public. So,
on the encryption point that you made, there's a whole subset industry right now looking at what's called PQE, the post-quantum encryption. In fact, NIST has already come out with 2 different algorithms that are approved for use. So in my space, in the security space, we're already working with vendors to make sure that our product can intake a PQ, a post-quantum encryption algorithm with the cryptography that we're doing in the space.
Good.
And so that's something that I've seen in the cyber world. It's been a hot topic in the last 6 months.
good. Excellent.
My name is Sunil Mehta. I represent 2 companies, both in the healthcare area, one artificial intelligence, the other doing some software development. On the artificial intelligence side, the biggest challenge we have found, and it is a comment, and further you guys can comment on that, is the access to data to train the model. Because, the pendulum has swung to a side of extreme right on HIPAA that we are talking to a major healthcare organization of this country, and they have 10 years of data. And of course, one of the businesses that I advise is focused on Gen AI, but they're also focused on AI for imaging. So there is a vision engineer who's a founder, and he can take pathology, radiology, and even scopy video. They have lots of data, but they say that anonymize that data per today's standard is impossible. So my comment is that industry, the healthcare systems, which is the industry, and the government have to come together to solve this problem so we can enter real AI that will affect our life. Otherwise, I think it's a problem at this point to train a really good model.
Yep.
And I can have Ajay and everybody else comment on that.
Yeah, what are your thoughts about getting some of these AI startups the data that they need in a way that is ethical, in an ethical manner?
Ajay, you want to go ahead?
Sure.
Okay.
You know, that I don't like this question, right? Not because I don't think that lack of data availability is the problem anymore. I think that was a problem. We've gotten past it. Many health systems have given their data to Google or Microsoft and others to use. You know, HIPAA has the BAA qualification that allows the sharing of data if it's for a medically valid purpose, and it has worked. It has held up, and the Mayo Clinic isn't the only holder of Mayo Clinic data. So if anybody has been treated there, then, you know, big tech has seen your medical records without the need for de-identification. I'd also say that as algorithms do get smarter and smarter, they don't need quite as much data to come up with a prediction, right? And it's a machine learning iterative process, so it can go into the future. You can deploy the algorithm today, you know, let's say offline, and allow it to learn for 6 months against the 6 months new data that comes in as it's being trained and taught. I don't think that the lack of data availability will be the problem. And as Al had said, the lack of resources for a new company is also not likely to be a problem. Honestly, I think it's going to be creativity and courage that are going to be the bigger problems going forward for any AI company in any industry.
So having data is one thing, right? And I agree with you that, yes, that having data, you know, and I agree with Ajay that there's plenty of data. Now being able to use that to, you know, from data management perspective, data governance perspective, data quality management perspective, all of those things, that requires an entire process to get the training data prepared. In addition to that, now, as Ajay said, what he was referring to is using Gen AI. If you know your data distributions, you can actually create synthetic data. So it will mimic real data, but it will be created from synthetic Gen AI source. So based on the distributions that you have given that, and that means that now it gives you even better way to build those systems. So again, think for those people who are not familiar with AI, the thing about AI is that unlike other systems in the past, I explain it this way, they were built for data. You brought data in, you stored data in them, and you then looked at data and you analyzed data. These AI systems are built from data. So they're not for data, they're from data. They take shape out of data. So because it's a pattern really that they're getting, so that they're summarizing in a way, capturing that pattern from data. So data is necessary. And you're right that in healthcare, problems will continue, but also there's relationships. Isn't Microsoft and Epic Systems, they just did something together recently, which is another, you know, mind-boggling thing, which means they're serious about this.
Yep. I want to thank our panelists because we're about time, but I want to, before we wrap up, I just want to give a round of applause for all our panelists. Yes, go ahead.
I want to echo Hector's thank you for being here. And I also have one request. There is a sheet running around, and if you would please initial by your name. Thank you so much. That way we know who is here.
And we are going to have also, we're going to be hanging around here. The bar is open and the food is still available, so we can network as long as we want to. If you want to mingle with some of the panelists, I think most of you will stay here. Yes. So welcome for that. And also, if we have this Discover assessment, if you want to reach it out, you can actually scan this QR code, and also our contact information. If you're looking to get some of these, a list of these productivity tools that are available now, brand new tools, connect with us and we can actually send you the information as well. All right. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your evening.